96, 95 years ago, where a group of mine workers were killed by National Guard militia sent in at the request of the company they worked for with the help of the government of Colorado. It is an ugly stain on this state's history, and it's not such a distant past. When we were there this morning, we also honored the memories of the 11 workers on the Deepwater Horizon, the rig that blew up in the Gulf of Mexico, and the 29 workers in the coal mines of West Virginia who lost their lives as well. You would think that a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate and a Democratic President might actually move an agenda that protects the safety and health of workers. We haven't done that yet. In fact, we've done virtually nothing to update the damages that workers receive when they're the victims of willful neglect or abuse on the part of their employers. And we continue to lose folks to conditions like these every day. If you go to Ludlow, and you should, I hope, you can walk down the steps into a cellar, which is where 11 bodies, women and children, were found after the militia, the state militia, opened fire the night before this tragedy in the beginning of the century. And it's a very harrowing scene now. We've made a lot of progress since then, and we owe a lot of that progress, frankly, to the United Mine Workers and the labor movement. The working conditions in many of these facilities have improved, but not enough. And as long as we continue to draw our energy, the power we consume to light our buildings and heat our homes from the work of men and women who suffer and toil and sweat and die on our behalf, we lose a little bit of our humanity in the process. The mine workers I met with today, the food workers I met with just a few months ago who supported our campaign, the truck driver I mentioned from Commerce City the other night, they deserve the same kind of representation as anybody else. I would argue they deserve more than the corporate interest groups that are bankrolling my opponent's campaign. The trouble is this: it's very difficult, I think, for most members of the Senate ever to bite the hand that feeds them. There's a reason that those corporations lavish millions of dollars in contributions on members of Congress. And it's not the goodness of their own hearts that leads these giant multinationals to make these campaign expenditures. They don't actually have hearts. Despite what the Supreme Court may have concluded, corporations are not actually people. And it's because they know they get something in return. The trouble is, especially for people who care about progressive causes and the least fortunate among us, we'll never be able to compete as long as we sell democracy to the highest bidder, because the interests we represent and seek to advance among the poorest and most disabled Coloradans in particular will never have that kind of cash. And they shouldn't have to. We ought to be willing to value every American, not because of their net worth, but just because of their inherent worth as human beings. That's what my campaign is about. I know it's what many of you in your careers have been about as well, and I hope you'll join this cause. I want to just suggest a couple ways you can, and then I'll turn things over to the mom or to Margaret, or we have to sneak out. We're going to win this race in spite of the out-of-state corporate cash that's flooding the opposition's coffers. But we're only going to do it if and when we find enough people of modest means to chip in. If you contribute $200 to this campaign, for example, you'll buy enough yard signs for us to fill a precinct. That costs about $200. If you're able to spend $400 on this campaign, you'll help us put a 30-second ad on the radio during the rush hour. If you can afford $800, you could put us on TV. That's the cost of a 30-second spot. $800 will buy us a spot on the evening news. And I'll make you one last offer. For a limited time only, as my mom was telling somebody the other day. If you're able to invest $2,400 or find enough friends who can contribute $2,400 to the campaign, which is the legal maximum you can give in the primary, I will not ask you for another dime. At least until the August 11th, when we have a lot more friends and start doing battle for the general. I really, really appreciate your help. Voting begins in just a few weeks, so we're quite anxious, urgent, really, to get the resources we need to get up on TV and compete for the attention of the bewildered Americans who don't actually devote their Sunday afternoons to backyards like this and think through the politics of the moment. I'm reminded of the line Adlai Stevenson used when he ran for president in 1952 and 56. He had been governor of Illinois and was obviously too erudite ever to get elected. A woman came up to him after the end of one of his speeches. She said, "Governor Stevenson," she said, "that was brilliant. said, "You have the support of every thinking American." And he said, "Well, thank you very much, ma'am, but it's not enough. I need a majority." So, we need a majority, and I'm glad, I hope you'll be part of it. Thanks so much for sharing your opinion.